Here's to anyone who's ever looked up. The airheads. And the space cases.
Live long and prosper.
The flight fanatics. The armchair astronauts. And the casually curious. Here's to those who know the thrust in newtons of a Pratt & Whitney J75 turbojet engine. And those who silently ask, what's keeping this thing in the air? Here's to those who can list the name, mission history, and favorite breakfast of every Mercury astronaut. And those who've ever searched for, how does a toilet work in space? Here's to the people who knew a P-38 Lightning from a P-51 Mustang. And the people who thought those were the names of cars. Those captivated by the miracle of flight. And those who are just happy to make their flight. So whatever captures your curiosity,
we choose to go to the moon,
or propels you to new heights. When it comes to the sky, there's space for all of us.
Good evening. I'm Chris Brown, and I have the honor of serving as the John and Adrienne Mars Director of the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. Thank you for joining us for tonight's John H. Glenn Lecture in Space History. This is our premier annual event for exploring the role of space, science, and technology in modern American life. In the decades that we have been hosting this lecture, we've celebrated groundbreaking moments in aerospace history, explored important topics, and talked to inspiring people. And tonight is no exception. Tonight's lecture is also a bit of a milestone for us because it marks the return of the Glenn Lecture to our flagship location here on the National Mall. Now that the Lockheed Martin IMAX Theater has reopened, we are able to once again hold this marquee lecture here in DC. And I think it's standing room only, so congratulations. I understand we also have people tuning in online from across the country, so thank you for making us a part of your evening wherever you may be. In addition to reopening the Lockheed Martin IMAX Theater, we also opened 5 new galleries just over a month ago. As you entered through our new entrance from the National Mall, you took your first steps into the Boeing Milestones of Flight Hall. I hope you could feel the weight of all the incredible moments of aerospace history preserved within these walls. Hopefully, you had the chance to explore the new galleries before you took your seats here in the theater, and if not, I encourage you to come back soon to take a closer look. Those 5 new exhibitions, along with 8 we opened in 2022, are part of our ongoing renovation of this building. If you've been with us since we started this project back in 2018, I'm sure you share my excitement that the project is very close to completion. Next summer, on July 1st, the 50th anniversary of this building opening to the public, we will unveil our final 7 galleries and officially complete the reimagination of the National Air and Space Museum. Thank you. Sometimes the last year's the hardest, so we'll get through it. It's actually less than a year. One of the galleries that will open next year is the RTX Living in the Space Age Hall, which is on the other side of this theater. Anchoring that gallery is the full-scale Hubble Space Telescope. It was a structural dynamic test vehicle used for Earthbound testing, but displayed nearby in the gallery will be 2 Hubble instruments that did go to space. We are able to display these space-flown Hubble artifacts thanks to the space shuttle missions that visited the Hubble Space Telescope 5 times in the 1990s and 2000s. On the final Hubble servicing mission, STS-125, the crew removed the wide planetary camera, referred to as WIFPIC-2, and the COSTAR instrument from the telescope and brought them back to Earth, where they joined our collection and will soon be on public display. Tonight's speaker, shuttle astronaut Michael Massimino, flew on 2 of those Hubble servicing missions. He was selected as an astronaut in 1996 and flew to space on STS-109 in 2002 and STS-125, the mission that brought WIFPIC-2 and COSTAR back to Earth in 2009. During these 2 space flights, Mike logged 30 hours outside the shuttle repairing the telescope. Since then, he has been a champion for human spaceflight, sharing his experience through interviews, talks, and social media. Massimino also has written books about space, some available for purchase tonight, which he will be signing in the Boeing Milestones of Flight Hall after the lecture. Space history curator Jennifer Levasseur will be moderating questions and answers with Mike at the end of his talk. For those of you here in person, questions can be submitted using the QR code on the screen. Those of you tuning in online can submit your questions in the YouTube chat. But before we get further along, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the sponsor of tonight's program, the Boeing Company. Representing Boeing tonight is Jeff Shockey, Executive Vice President of Government Operations, Global Policy, and Corporate Strategy. Thank you, Jeff, for you and your team's generous support of the museum and our educational programming. And with that, it's time for the main event. I'd like to welcome Mike to the stage.
Ignition, liftoff, 30 minutes after the hour.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much for the intro. Thanks to the museum for having me. Ashley and Jennifer, thanks for putting up with me and getting me down here. So really very honored to be here. I'm kind of a bit overwhelmed. Really wonderful to be here. So thanks for having me. It's quite an honor. I did want to say something, since this is the John Glenn lecture, about John Glenn. So he had his very famous first flight, first American orbit, but he also joined us when he was wearing a flight suit like that to go to space, joined my colleagues and I in the astronaut office when he flew again back in 1998. And I was a fairly new astronaut at that point. I was selected in 1996. And one of the cool things I got to do in my job was be the family escort for this crew. So I got to know John and his wife Annie and their kids and grandkids. And he lived up to everything you would want a hero to be like. He was just a wonderful man, was very happy to be around us again back with NASA. His family was wonderful. It was great getting to know them. And years later, when you mentioned a couple of books, and when my first book came out, when it was coming out, my publisher said, you should try to get a quote from one of the astronauts. I go, who would you want me to reach out to? And he said, well, John Glenn would be the ultimate person to write a little blurb, an endorsement of your book. And I go, well, I kind of know him, I can try. And I wrote to him, and he wrote back, and he said, sure, I'd be happy to. And then I sent him a copy of the book, and a couple of months go by, and we're hitting a deadline. You got to publish this book. And I was like, geez, I don't know, if maybe doesn't like the book, he just doesn't want to. So I ended up contacting his secretary, and this was this was now probably, around July or so of 2016. And so I wrote it, her name was Kathy, I remember, and said, Kathy, I understand, I just, my publisher's bugging me, and I understand maybe he doesn't like the book or something, and she writes back and she says, no, Mike, she called him the senator, which was kind of interesting. She said, the senator wants to do this for you, but his eyesight is failing, and we're trying to find someone to read the book to him so he can give you a quote. And I was like, cross this off of his to-do list. He's got more important things going on. He doesn't need to be worrying about listening to my book. But he did that, and he gave me a quote from my book. So to me, that kind of sums up who this person was. He didn't need to do that for me, right? But that's who he was. He said, I'm going to do this. I will follow through, and he gave me a very nice endorsement for my book. So it's really an honor for me to be here, especially knowing who this person was, and just a true American hero. Okay, let me move on. This is me as a little kid. So I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a little kid. I was 6 years old when they landed on the moon, and so I don't remember John Glenn's first flight. Actually, I was born the same year as that. He flew in space, so I was too little for that. But I do remember Apollo 11, and when I remember watching that, in my family home in Franklin Square, Long Island, just out of New York City, and it made me want to grow up to be an astronaut. And this is me dressed up like Neil Armstrong, probably about like 2 days after the moon landing. The reason that it's a gray astronaut costume is because it's a converted elephant costume from the first grade play. So I was an elephant in the first grade play, and my mom transferred this over to be an astronaut costume. And I'm holding my astronaut Snoopy. Right, so Snoopy was my co-pilot. I was Neil Armstrong, and Snoopy was like Buzz Aldrin. We had these backyard adventures. By the time I was about 8 years old, I realized I was never going to grow up to be a fearless test pilot astronaut like my hero, Neil Armstrong. That's when I discovered I was afraid of heights. And I was like, there's no way I thought that this could work out. And plus, these are superheroes. How do you grow up to be like John Glenn or one of these? This can't happen. So I crossed it off the list of possibilities. When I was a senior in college, I went to the movies. And it's interesting you call this lecture's called The Right Stuff, right? So I went to see the movie The Right Stuff that came out in, I think it was in 1983. It might have come out, but I saw it like in January of 1984. And it was about for those of you who don't know, it's about the original 7 astronauts and the test pilots that came before them. John Glenn is very prominently played by Ed Harris in that movie, of course. So anyway, I saw this man. I read the book. It's a book by Tom Wolfe of the same name, and it started me thinking again about what my true interest was as a little boy, what kind of got me interested in engineering, which is what I was studying, and that was the space program. And I thought, well, who knows? I don't know if I can become an astronaut, but maybe I could, as an engineer, I could work in the space program. So I ended up working for a couple of years after college, and then I went to grad school. And when I was in grad school, NASA made an announcement they were looking for astronauts, and I sent in my application. And about 9 months later, I got a letter from NASA, and the letter said no. There are other words on the page, but we're trying to cut down on. The government could have saved a lot of money on ink by just putting no on that page. So, but I was going to give up. A couple years later, I was almost done with grad school, and they were looking for astronauts again. And I applied a second time, and I received another letter from NASA. This one was a different letter. They changed the date at the top of the letter. It was the same letter I had gotten a couple years earlier. All right, so then I go, and I was lucky enough to get a job down at the Johnson Space Center, and NASA's looking for astronauts again. I apply, and this time I don't get a letter, I get a phone call. They want me to come in for an interview. So the interview back then was a whole week of activities. There's a lot of there's a social events as well are included, and the selection board interview, lots of medical exams. They get to know you very well during this process. They want to know all the people who are trying to become astronauts, what they're all about. So they got to know me very well, and with that information, they rejected me. So I was 0 for 3. Now, I was also medically disqualified. Back then, you had to be able to see an eye chart pretty well. All these rules have changed now, but back then, I could not pass the eye exam, and they didn't accept any medical procedure. But I found out about something called vision training. And this is you do these exercises, and you kind of train your eyes and your brain to see better. And I made an appointment with an optometrist in Houston. And as I'm waiting to be examined, ready to go, this is my only hope to try to get back in the game. Because what NASA told me when I was medically disqualified was that they would not even read my application again. but that's it, because you're medically unfit. And that seemed, I mean, I can understand that other people he wanted to choose, but to not even be able to submit an application was very disappointing. So anyway, so I'm in there ready to get examined, and the optometrist walks in, and she looks at me and she says, "You're here for vision training?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm ready to go." And she says, "I don't think it's going to work." I go, "How could you tell? You haven't even hooked me up to the eyeball machine yet. You know, you don't even know what you..." And she goes, "It only works with kids." You know, says, I've never had a patient over 8 years old, you know, because her eyes are still a form. It's a kid thing. And I was like, "Oh, please, doctor." Her name was Desiree Hopping. I said, "Dr. Hopping, please help me. I can be so immature you won't even know the difference between me." So anyway, Dr. Hopping went and, thanks, a good audience. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. I'll just tell you stories about my childhood the whole time. And anyway, so we'll get to Hubble, I promise. Anyway, she helped me out. I was able to pick up a couple lines on the eye chart and apply again, and got another interview and passed the eye exam and was in the astronaut class in 1996. So this is okay, so I'm the second row from the top, the third guy from the left, that's me. That's what I looked like back then, right there. So I could tell you stories about all these people. This guy right here, Mike Fink, Spanky's in space right now. Can you imagine? So some of my classmates are still there. Spanky's on the ISS right now. He called me like 2 Saturdays ago, and I was taking a nap. And the bad thing is you can't call the space station, right? So I got, "Mike, please call back. I'm sorry." So anyway, but that's my astronaut class of 1996. When I was selected to be on a space flight, I was sent very luckily to be part of a Hubble Space Telescope crew. There was 5 missions to service Hubble. I was on the final 2 of those missions. I heard about Hubble when it launched in 1990. I remember even before that, hearing about it. I remember there was, right before the Challenger accident, Life magazine did like a feature about Hubble, and I remember I was living in New York City at the time, and I picked up that magazine about Hubble was supposed to launch that year, and then the accident happened. It was delayed a bit. And then I remember I was in grad school, and they had some issues with that's why CoStar went in there, to help the corrective optics and so on. And so I followed this, and I was working in Houston when they had the first servicing mission in 1993, and it was amazing what they did on that mission, I thought. And then it was just a great team to be a part of. And I think 2 of my crewmates here, unless they ran away because they didn't want to listen, but I think Scooter and John, where are you guys? You guys here somewhere? Okay, both are there, right? So John and Scooter. So Scott, there you go. Scott Altman, our commander. And John, there he is right there. There's Scooter right there. And then John's right next to him. There he is. John was our payload commander. So he was in charge of the workings of the telescope and all the spacewalks. He led us through that. He was our payload commander. And Scott was our flight commander, taking care of the shuttle systems, kind of like Papa Bear, making sure everything went well, landing the space shuttle, incredible stuff. So, but the reason I mentioned these guys, when I was thinking about this, John, I don't know if you remember this story, but when I was a new astronaut, well, I wasn't so new by this point. It was about 4 years, 4.5 years that I had been selected, and I was training and got to know the guys in the office, and John, of course, and we were doing these development runs for the next Hubble Space Telescope mission. And there are some moments in your life that just kind of stand out, like there's a time before and a time after. And this was one of them for me. John and I was standing next to each other, and I was we were getting briefed, because I wasn't assigned to the flight yet, but there was a bunch of astronauts there, right? And we were getting briefed on the spacewalks that they were trying to develop, and these were the issues and the decisions that they had to make and things they were trying to design and so on. And we were going to go in the water in the neutral buoyancy laboratory and execute these development plans and come up with comments, and so I was trying to learn. But it was a different day, because the whole Goddard team was there. In fact, I've got a picture here. This is just some of the folks here. This is me back here. This is after right before we flew for my second flight, and there's John right there. Scooter is right there. The rest of our crew are mixed in here. Is Ray J, our pilot, Christy Hansen, our lead instructor, all these faces, all these Bron Sheffield. All these folks here, just a wonderful group of people, and they were briefing us about what we were going to do. And I remember standing next to John and telling him, "Wow, John, this is really a big deal." John had already been to Hubble one time. He was coming up on, he had already flown 3 times in space. And I remember just saying, "John, wow, this is really a big deal. I hope it goes well." And he turns to me. This is the way I remember it anyway, John. You turned to me and you said, I hope it goes well for you too. And I go, why is that? And he said, well, you must know you're on the bubble. And I'm like, on the bubble of what? You know, and he goes, well, you're close to being assigned. And I go, I am? And he goes, yeah, you know, I hope this goes well for you. You know, this might lead to an assignment. That moment, I was like, it was something, I kind of felt it right down to my soul. Like, wow, the opportunity to go and be part of this team and fly to the Hubble Space Telescope and train with these folks and be able to contribute to a mission like that, that's more than I could ever dreamed of when I was dreaming about becoming an astronaut. So this is some of the folks that we work with, very dedicated group, lots of experience. Most of these folks in this picture are from the Goddard Space Flight Center. Some are from other parts of the country, from NASA, Johnson Space Center, of course, but that's just one of the team photos we took. I think Michael Solari is here too. Did you take this photo, Michael? You did? No, that's not Michael. Okay, Michael says no, but I'll give him credit anyway. You don't like the photo, Mike? Is it a good? Okay, Michael, he was our. You might be in this photo, Mike. Michael was he was kind of like our. He took lots of photos and a wonderful book about Hubble. He published with the photos and gave us some training on pictures as well. It's a little out of focus, so of course Michael didn't take this picture. Anyway. Okay, so we would spend these days at the NBL, the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, and get into our spacesuits, just like we would when we were getting ready to go to space. And it's a bulky suit. It has about 7 layers. Depends how you count, but let's go with 7 layers, including a layer of Kevlar, which is protective material, and weighs a few hundred pounds. And then you put another 100 pounds or so of tools on top of you, and you go down into the water and practice those spacewalks from start to finish. These were wonderful days, and I'm sure my friends here would agree. They were really special days. Like, you look back on it like, wow, that was amazing. That was as part of our job, and we had 5 spacewalks in each one of the flights. We would run those Monday to Friday. The Goddard team would come in the week before and prep us and get ready and get everything ready. The stuff would go in the water over the weekend, all the equipment we needed, and then we would practice those spacewalks. This is a shot of me and Mike Good, Bueno, who's on the robot arm, and we're going to open up the doors to the telescope to do a change out of the RSUs, the rate sensor units, inside of the Hubble Space Telescope. That's a full-scale mock-up of the Hubble. The Hubble was so large we couldn't fit the whole thing in the water, so the forward light shield was put on the side. But what you're looking at there, that's the actual size, and they have a replica of it. Is it open to the public yet? Okay, you can't look at it yet, but come back at some point. You'll be able to see all this stuff. July 1st of what? Of next year? Okay, July 1st of next. Okay, we got to wait till July, I guess. Anyway, so but it looks just like that. This looks a lot nicer than this one. This is the underwater version. But the point I was trying to make is a full-scale mock-up, and these boxes here. Oops, sorry. These boxes here are full-scale mock-ups of the carriers that would have the equipment. It's a full-scale mock-up of the shuttle payload bay, and there's a mock-up of the space station. This is a big pool. It's 100 feet wide, 200 feet long, and 40 feet deep. It's the largest pool in the world. And we use a series of weights and buoyancy flotation so that we become neutrally buoyant in the water, floating like you would when you're floating in space. And it was a great way to train. I didn't realize that until I got to space and realized I was, am I really ready for this? But the pool was a great way to prepare you to do a spacewalk. There's also the communication, the choreography, working with the crew inside that was helping you with the checklist, people working the robot arm on our flights, which included Scooter worked the robot arm for moving the EVA crewmen around as well. You see the divers around us helping. Some of these are engineers from Goddard would be in the water with us, trying to give us little lessons on things if we needed it. This was a special day, though. That's an IMAX camera. This is an IMAX screen we're on here. So they did make an IMAX movie, Hubble 3D, and we had the guy's name was Howard Hall, was the diver, with a cool group of divers that came down with them that filmed underwater with that. That's an IMAX camera, and it's encasing for the scenes that they filmed at the NBL. They mentioned the wide field camera. This is that's going to be available July the 1st. So this is of 2026, right? All right, July the 1st, 2026. So this is Chris is all right. He can take a joke here. He's all right. He's doing okay. All right, anyway, so here, so this, you can see it through the window from the mall, all right? So there you go. But this is the mock-up we used in the water, and now it's going to be on, the real one that we pulled out of the Hubble. We put a new one in there, and then the one we took out is right here. So you get a chance to see that too. So anyway, but what we typically did is you'd pull stuff out and put new stuff in. That's kind of what the drill was. I'll explain, the last mission we started getting a little more ambitious and taking things apart that we never thought we could take apart to repair them. But the basic drill was remove the old piece, stow it, put the new one in, and then bring the old piece home so you can look at it in the Air and Space Museum. That's what went on. This was my first launch into space. This was back in March of 2002. It was on Space Shuttle Columbia. There's a cloud deck right at about 10,000 feet as our flame went through it, lit it up. But that was quite a day, a little intimidating looking at a space shuttle right before it launches. It's ready to go to space, well lit up in the night sky. We got out there in the middle of the night. It was a little intimidating, but I had to remember, I'm trained well. I've got a good team. I've got the tools I need, and let's go inside. Once I got inside, I was feeling a lot better, but a little intimidating looking at the spaceship that morning. This is me on my very first spacewalk. So on our checklist, when you're a new-time spacewalk, first-time spacewalker, the first line on the checklist was translation adaptation. Did I get that right, John? Yep. And that's a code word for go get your picture taken. So I went up, and John, I bet you did take this photo. All right, John took a lot of photos. John, again, I don't know if you remember saying this to me, John, but when we were doing our photo training, John said to me, he goes, Mass, pay attention here because when you come back from space flight, you come back with two things, memories and photos, and memories fade, right? So, and John was great about making sure that everyone, there's plenty of pictures of everybody, and we tried to do the best we get to get pictures of John, but he was really good with the camera, and that's me on my very first spacewalk. You can see the Earth reflected in my visor. It was extraordinary. I mean, looking at the Earth, looking at the Earth from the windows of the spacecraft is really beautiful. But when you get outside, the whole universe seems to open up to you, and you can look anywhere, and it looks like a paradise. I mean, I felt like I was looking to an absolute paradise when I was looking at Earth, and you see it from afar, but I think what that did for me was make me appreciate it more when I'm on the ground. I was looking at it, I was wearing a spacesuit and admiring it, but we get to deal with Earth every day. We get to be around people. We get to come to this event, this wonderful museum, this beautiful city that we're in. And there's a lot of natural beauty, of course, in our planet as well that we get to enjoy. And so I think try to be amazed every day because we're living in an amazing place. This is from my first flight, first spacewalk. That's Jim Newman, my spacewalking buddy on my first flight. We're doing a handoff of the reaction wheel assembly, which helped point the telescope. This was a task that was added kind of late because one of them failed. We needed to replace it. And we had trained this, of course, in the NBL. I had never seen the Hubble Space Telescope for real until I got to orbit. And I remember after I put this reaction wheel in, that's me on the robot arm, so I put that in and hooked it up. And I remember closing the door to that equipment bay, and the thought that went through my mind, that was the first time I had seen it, obviously. It was the first time I'd been in space, the first time I'd seen the telescope, the first time I had done it for real, but I felt like I'd done it 100 times. That's how well prepared we were, how our training team and our facilities, how well prepared we were to do the work that we were going to do. We just felt it just all flowed, all was work really well. What it doesn't prepare you for is the view that you see. That's different, of course, but the working of the tools and how the telescope works and all that, we were very well prepared with our training to do that, do all those tasks. This is our crew from the first flight. That's me right there, and Scooter, and John right there, and our other crew members. The space shuttle in the back there, that's Columbia. That's the last time Space Shuttle Columbia made it back to Earth successfully. The next flight was STS-107 for Columbia. It was about 11 months later or so. no, less about 10 months later. Anyway, and it didn't make it back. And that was the second major space shuttle accident we had. And the decision was made, and it made sense at the time, that we were going to continue to fly the space shuttle. You're going to do inspections. You're going to repair the spaceship. And that was going to work just fine if you were going to the International Space Station, because if you are at the International Space Station and there's an issue with your spaceship, you can stay there for a long time. Those of you who are watching television, the last couple, I guess a few months ago, you know about Butch and Sonny, they demonstrated this, right? Going up for 8 days and they ended up for 9 months up there, right? This can happen. So if you have your space shuttle at the space station and you can't come back, you can't repair the damage, you can stay there, but you can't do that at Hubble. There's no life support there. So the mission was canceled for a while. And John and I, John, you were at headquarters, I think, when this was going on. Is that right? Yep. So John, I remember getting a phone call from John that we were going to try to see if we could do it with a robotic mission. This would keep the team alive and give us a chance to maybe go back to Hubble with a robotic mission. That was a really interesting project to work on, but what I think we really found, and it'd be interesting to hear what John has to say about this, but I think I came away with the robotic mission was cool, was going to be really expensive, but humans could do a better job than what the robot could do, at least at that point. Would you agree with that, John? Cool. All right, okay, so we'll move on from that. And we decided, we came up with a way to go back to Hubble, and we were involved with these decisions of how can we get back to Hubble. Mike Griffin came in as a new administrator and wanted us to go back to Hubble and try to do that one last mission. But again, we had to overcome these issues with the safety of going to Hubble with the space shuttle. So what we came up with a bunch of things, but the primary driver was a rescue flight. So here we have a space shuttle Atlantis in the foreground, Endeavour is in the background, and it was this is the first time that NASA had 2 spaceships ready to launch. They've had 2 spaceships on a launch pad before, but the first time that they were both ready to launch with crews ready to go. So we had our crew ready to go to Hubble. We had a rescue crew that was going to come get us if we had trouble. We had practiced this in the water where we would do an exchange of crew through spacewalks, and that was shown to be doable, and that gave NASA the confidence that we could go to Hubble, and if we had trouble with our spaceship, we could be rescued. So that was the plan. So we had a crew that we had trained with, our rescue crew. They were in quarantine when we were there. We were very nice to them, by the way, just in case they had to come get us. But luckily, that wasn't needed. This is our crew, and again, here I am, and the other guys are here: John right in the middle, and Scooter, Greg Johnson, our pilot, Megan MacArthur, our flight engineer and robot arm operator. Drew Feustel was teamed up with John as a spacewalking team on this flight, and Bueno and Mike Good and I were the other spacewalking team. So I've got our launch into space, a little video of that, and this is from May of 2009.
Liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis. Final visit to enhance the vision of Hubble into the deepest grandeur of our universe.
Houston, Atlantis, small program with the FCS channel.
Bypass across the board, Scooter, no action.
Okay, got LVLH ranging? I do. All right, I see him in the bucket. It's 71.
Atlantis on its way, all 3 engines now throttling down as the vehicle passes through the area of maximum dynamic pressure.
Atlantis, Houston, no action on the MPS H2 altitude. Houston, we copy, no action. Back at 104, Scooter.
Three, 103.
Auto. Okay, that all looks good.
Okay. You can applaud if you like. I felt like you wanted to. I don't know if you really do it. It's like, what do we do now? Well, I don't know. It's pretty cool. Anyway, thank you for applauding for me, and thank you for listening. It's great to be able to relive this with you tonight, so thank you for listening. So this is our space shuttle. The voice you heard going back and forth was our commander, Scott Altman, talking to the control center as things were going wrong, but nothing too bad, I guess, because we made it, so that was good. So what you see, we've just lifted off here, and we haven't even cleared the tower, but we're already going 100 miles an hour, and we accelerate from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in just 2.5 minutes. The main engine started up first in the video. They're liquid fueled, so just like a lawnmower or a car, if you cut the fuel flow, you can shut them down. But you only have 6 seconds to do that because after the 6 seconds, the solid rocket boosters, those 2 big Wright rockets made of solid material like giant sticks of dynamite, and once they light, you're on your way. And they run really rough. They actually shake you up pretty heavily. I remember my first flight, like the guys, it was Jim Newman and Rick Linehan next to me down in the mid deck. I was down on the mid deck, and I thought, you know, all this commotion, you know, all this action. I was like, I thought there was something wrong, you know. And these guys are high-fiving each other over my head, and I'm like, cut it out, you know. What's the matter with you guys? This seems serious. And they're like, you weren't scared, were you, Mike? I was like, no, not at all. So that's why I wanted to fly a second time so I could make fun of the guy next to me. So when we went to this place, you know, Drew Foystel's like, oh my God, I go, what's the matter, Drew? You scared? It's nothing to worry about. But it really is no way to replicate that on Earth. That, you know, that amount of acceleration and the speed. It's really quite amazing. There's no doubt that you're moving when it happens. You know, you're going someplace, and I remember the words going through my head were speed and power. That's what it was. That's what I was feeling, like, speed and power. And I remember thinking, I cannot believe people built this. It was one of the, I cannot believe that people could build something that was so powerful. And I remember looking at the checklist above our heads and looking at that. It was the stuff you would do of, you know, raise your visor, or close your visor, pull your oxygen, the green apple that's a little, you know, unhook from the. There was all these things to do, and it was there, and I was like, man, I think, you know, either it's going to be good or bad. I don't think this stuff is going to help us at all. It's going to be a good day, or just something to read while, you know, the inevitable happens if something goes wrong, because it was just beyond. I just felt like it was beyond anything that we could really control. It was so much power that it was taking us to orbit, and after about like, I don't know, maybe a minute or so, I had this sensation that I was leaving. I was leaving Earth. I was leaving home for the first time. I mean, I, of course, been on trips and around different places, but I feel like I was really leaving home, the planet, everybody that I knew. Man, I'm really going someplace this time. That's the thoughts that were going through my head. One thing that was added after the accident was the need to inspect the vehicle. So this is an inspection boom that you see, and was made by, guess what country made this thing? So anyway, they also made that. So that's a robot arm, you know, the regular remote manipulator system there, and then we have the inspection boom, the orbital inspection system is here attached to it, and it allows us to do an inspection of the entire vehicle to make sure we didn't have any damage. We were very concerned about, of course, getting stranded up there, even though we did have a crew that was willing to come get us, and that was all part of the plan. But we did a careful inspection of the entire vehicle to make sure we were okay. This is after we rendezvoused. So Scott Altman was flying the space shuttle at 17,500 miles an hour in formation with the Hubble Space Telescope, and lined us up just perfectly with doing that. Amazingly, the skill that he and our other pilot astronauts at NASA, just amazing what they're able to do with an aircraft or a spaceship, and flew us right in there and close enough so Megan MacArthur was able to go in and grab the Hubble with the robot arm that you see right there. So now we've gotten close to it enough that we can grab it, and now we've got it in our grips on the robot arm, and then it would go down into a servicing structure so we could do our spacewalk starting the next day. CoStar was mentioned. Let's see, the Corrective Optics Space Telescope Axial Replacement is what CoStar stands for. You're going to get to see that when the Hubble exhibit opens up. And it's a very cool looking piece of equipment that you'll get to see. But here it is coming out. Drew and John did that task, and then they put a new instrument, the Cosmic Origin Spectrograph, in its place. So this was kind of, I wouldn't say, anything that we did was typical, but this was what we had done before, pull something out and put a new thing in. There were two of the instruments on Hubble, the Advanced Camera for Surveys and the Space Telescope Imaging Spectrograph, that the same size as the CoStar, basically. CoStar, as I learned earlier, is a little bit bigger than in size than the other instruments, but they're about the size of a refrigerator or a telephone booth. And those instruments had power failures in them, and we did not have replacements for them. So we devised a way to open up these instruments with different tools to undo engineering that was never meant to be undone. So these engineers and technicians did a great job of sealing up these instruments so no one could ever take them apart. So we never thought you would ever repair an instrument in space. You would just take it out and put a whole new one in. But this was the last mission of Hubble, and we didn't have replacements for those two instruments. So we came up with ways to take them apart, right? Can we do the impossible? That's what that was all about. And so this is the Space Telescope Imaging Spectrograph, the front of it. So the power supply is buried behind this access panel. Each one of these little dots you see here is a screw, and there are 111 of those screws here. Yeah, so, and this was all put together, really carefully. What they did is they put a washer with each one of these screws, and then they put glue, they put staking on the threads so they would never back out, and so and it was like little things like, this center of gravity label there, that helps them when they put on the second servicing mission, when they install that instrument, it allows you to balance the instrument and maneuver a little bit. But it also is it's a metal plate that covers a few of these screws. So we had to figure out a way to get that out of the way. This is a little clamp over here that had to be taken off. And we can't lose any of this stuff. And then there's this handrail, which I'll talk about here. The handrail was in the way of a few of these screws. So we had to clear the area here and then figure out a way to get this panel off. And this is me practicing. They were so concerned about this, they gave us our own practice instrument. This is in what we called the annex to our office. Our office was kind of on the outside of the floor there, with windows and stuff. And on the inner part of the building, there was an office right across it. We called it the annex. And there I am practicing with this. This is a tool we all contributed to the building of. It was a high-speed tool that with a light on it, and there was over 100 new tools developed for this task, at great taxpayer expense, might I add. So it was, we were going to be successful here with these repairs we were doing, and this one fell on my day. The ACS fell on John and Drew's day. Theirs, by the way, went really well. It was very smooth when they did their repair. And then Bueno and I went out there. But here I am practicing. So the idea was to clear the area, get that handrail out of the way, and then this little metal cutter thing got that center of gravity label out of there, and other things needed to be done. And then I had to remove some of the screws here very carefully so we could mount these guide studs to mount this thing on it. And then all these little holes, these are all holes. You can see the tool going through one of them. They line up with all those little screws. And once they come out, they would kind of float inside of these labyrinths in here. The different colors are the different types of screws they had, and there's all these markings we had. But we practiced. We were going to get, so once you get inside, you got this, and we had to make sure you got the right one out of there too. I think it was the top, I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was the top one. It works now, so I guess it was the top one. But anyway, we had to yank the top one. So they looked like a computer board, and it was held in place with launch lock bolts that had to be overcome, and it was a 120 pin connector at the back, so you had to be really careful. We had special tools to remove the old board without bending any pins, and then putting the next one in perfectly. This is all done in a clean room with the tools and lighting on the ground, and now we had to undo all that stuff. So this is during the repair. These are my feet sticking out of the telescope here, right there. So I wanted a good day that day, and we had practiced a lot, and mission was going pretty well up to that point. And that handrail was not, I don't think I really thought it was that difficult of a thing. The hard thing I thought was some of these other things, removing some of these screws without losing them, and going through all the 111 and pulling out the power supply. But the handrail had to come off, and it had 2 screws at the top and 2 screws at the bottom. And it was one line in the checklist. And I think we thought it was going to take about 30 seconds. We did not have a recourse for this, right? If I messed up one of those screws. We had screw head destroyers and other things, easy out kind of things we could use for the smaller ones. But this task, I think, at least the way I remember it, was so simple even I couldn't mess it up, getting that handrail out of the way. So 2 screws at the top come off, and then I'm probably giving trauma to my 2 friends back there because they were inside when this was going on. And 2 screws at the bottom, the one on the left comes out, and the one on the bottom right, I'm just spinning my tool, and nothing's coming out. And I pull out the tool, and I reach, kind of bend down with my helmet lights, and it was a hex head screw that was a hex head no more. It was a gnarled up piece of metal. And I quickly realized that screw's not coming out. We're not going to get the handrail off. We're not going to take the 111 screws out. We're not going to replace the power supply. We will not bring the STIS instrument back to life. We'll never find out if there's life in the universe. And everyone will blame me, is what I thought. And I remember leaning out of the telescope and looking down, and we were over the Pacific Ocean when this happened. I remember looking down at the ocean. I was like, man, I can't even get to a hardware store if I wanted. Right now, I'm in a lot of trouble. I really did it now. But they did come up with a solution. I want to show you some spacewalking tape here, and then you'll see me creating the problem. I'll point it out, and then the solution we have here. But I'll tell you what's going on here. So this is the second spacewalk of the mission on the final mission, and you can see I'm moving around. We're going to open the doors and do the rate sensor unit change out, the thing that you saw that we were training for in the pool. So I'm inside, and the doors are open, and then I'm undoing one of the connectors to the rate sensor unit, handing it out carefully to Mike. Okay, so that's my helmet camera looking out, and that's what it looks like. And you can see that black Star Trekker cover in front. So then, Mike, we had a special tool we called the pick stick that was used to place that thing over my head, and then we hooked it up. It all worked. Things are going well here, and there's, you see Mike's reaction there. There's Bueno's reaction. He was very happy. So you hear John's voice in the background. He was excited too. Okay, we also replaced the batteries on the telescope on this mission, and so there we are. We take the old one off the door. That's where they were located on this one equipment bay, and take it home and then put the new one in. Okay, so here's Scooter working the robot arm. And here what he just said, I was. So there was a change in the plan. He was doing something else. So he's moving Bueno around in a robot arm. And here I am stripping that lowest screw. Okay, that's my helmet camera. I am creating the problem here. And I just said I don't want to strip the thing. Well, too late, Mike. You've already done that. Okay, and there's Drew inside trying to figure out what we could do. And here, this is a very high-tech solution, so pay attention. Very high-tech stuff. Pay attention, please. There you have it. Oh, here's Scooter's reaction. Listen to this.
Main objective, the old one might not come out. We almost break the drive run. Then we can't get the RSUs in. It goes long. Then you're out there. You got a bar that you had to break off manually. Right. What's up with? Is that high tech? No. It's me and my.
Okay, we got cut off there at the end, but he says, "No, is that high tech? No, that's me in my garage." Right. And I don't know if any of the Goddard guys are here. Is anybody from the Goddard Space Flight Center on our servicing team here? I know one of Ed Rezak was supposed to come but couldn't make it. I don't know if they're... Anyway, these are very dedicated people. So when this happened, we did not have anything on our crib sheet to fix this problem, and they sprang into action. A guy named Jim Corbo, the way he told me his story was that he thought about what he would do if he was in his garage, right? And he said, maybe brute force is the way to go. I would just try to rip that thing off because it's loose at the top. And he called up to Jeff Rodden and a bunch of the engineers it was a Sunday afternoon, but they were working nearby here at the Goddard Space Flight Center. They ran into a clean room, and they found an instrument similar to ours, put it in the same configuration, loose at the top with the one bolt still in place, and they pulled on the top of that thing with a fish scale until it broke the bolt at 60 pounds of force. And then they radioed it in to Tony Sacacci, our flight director, and Dan Burbank, the guy on the left there, my good friend and astronaut classmate is there. But Tony explained to me they were concerned about debris, and so they had me tape the bottom of the handrail to contain the debris, and we gave it a couple tugs, and it broke. And the rest of the day, it's great to have redemption in life. You know, given a second chance, I was like, I'm not messing this up again. I'm going to really pay attention. But the team really pulled through. And there was never a moment that I felt like I was going to be blamed or thrown under the bus. And I knew that, you know, my astronaut friends, of course, but also that team on the ground, even though I couldn't see, I mean, I'm in space, right? But I knew that they were going to do everything they could to try to come up with something. And I didn't think of it. I had, you know, this was not my idea, but it was our team that came through for us that day. And I was happy at the end. So that's at the end. Scooter, I don't know if you remember this, but at the end of this spacewalk, I got a little bit ahead of Bueno, and I came in, I was in the airlock, right? And just like, oh, because you want to get ahead when you're an astronaut. You know, I just go do this stuff. Actually, I just stepped out of the light. There's people here. Hello, how are you? Very nice to see all of you. So, and I can see Scooter now. So anyway, so I go, do you remember? So I get in the airlock, and I'm, you know, moving things around or doing something. And Scooter says, Mass, what are you doing right now? Do you remember this? So he says to me, what are you doing right now? I go, I'm just cleaning up the airlock. And he says, is there anything you're doing now that you can't do later? And I'm like, no, why? What do you need? You know? And he says, why don't you just go outside and enjoy the view? So that's my buddy, right? My commander told me, why don't you go outside and take a break? And I went outside and clipped my tether in and just watched that view. You know, we were coming over to Pacific, over into California, and it was bright, beautiful sunlight and warmth. And just as I could feel you feel the cold before you see it when you're out there. You kind of like when you feel like a current in the water in your bones. That's what it felt like. And I felt that. And I remember looking, and I could see the Terminator, which separates night and day. We were heading into nighttime. And I think right about that time, Scooter, you said, all right, Mass, time to come inside. I was like, yep, time to come home. But that was the last moments I had out spacewalking for. So thanks, Scooter. I don't know if I've ever thanked you for that, but thank you for that. All right. This is me sending the first tweet from space. Take that, Neil Armstrong. Very historic moment. This is a space history lecture, by the way. So this is a very historic moment in the space program. Okay, that's me and my Snoopy. There you go. The one I had as a little kid. So there I am floating around with Snoopy for real. We had real life adventures. Okay, let's run. We're running low on time here, but let's go. This is a video of Drew making a burrito in space. All right, so the cameraman on that was John, because you can hear his voice. He says, take a bite. I don't know if that came through you later, but John, that was a very nice little video there. Okay, this is our land. This is Scooter landing the space shuttle perfectly. The best landing ever in the history of the space program, right there. So there we are landing at Edwards Air Force Base. All right, and this is another, Michael, I think you took this one. I did. Great, thank you. So Michael Solari took this one. This was, I think probably, Mike, this was probably maybe our last NBL run? Maybe? All right, it was our last NBL run. We'll go with that, or one of the last ones. But Mike took this picture, and Bueno and I had just come out of the pool, and these are some of the folks, our support folks here. I just think it's a really cool photo. It was the highlight. When I see seeing my buddies and seeing some of my friends or the people we work with on, not just us, but the whole Goddard team. It was amazing experience. I'm so grateful, not only to having a chance to become an astronaut and be part of NASA and the astronaut office all those years, but to get to go on these missions with the people I get to fly with and the people we work with. It was amazing. It was a highlight. Those years, the training that we did, especially for that second flight, was really special. It was a highlight of not just my career, but my life. It really was. It's such a privilege to get a chance to work with these folks, and I really love this photo because I think it captures at least some of our teammates. And these folks, I remember Christy Hansen coming to visit us in quarantine. She had to get checked out by the doctor and make sure she doesn't have a cold or anything. And she was saying, she was talking to the spacewalkers primarily, I guess. But I remember her leaving, and she was like, almost had a tear in her eye. And I would go, "What's up?" And she goes, "I just want you guys to be successful. I want you to do well so badly." She wanted it as much as we did. They were so dedicated. Everyone on that team was so dedicated to the telescope and to the mission at NASA. It was just a wonderful place, a wonderful way to go to work, and it was wonderful to be a part of these crews and these teams. These are some of the images, some of the early release images from our mission. This is a section of the sky in Omega Centauri. There's approximately, each one of these dots is a star. There's about 100,000 of them in here, part of a larger star field with over 10 million stars. This is Stephan's quintet. So you're looking at 5 galaxies here. This one on the upper left here is brighter and clearer because it's much closer to us than the other 4, and the 2 in the middle are colliding. And then this last one is the Butterfly Nebula. It's an exploding star, and it measures from end to end 2 light years across. And this is the last slide I have. These are all the folks in the support room. So, John and Scooter and I and the rest of our crewmates are up there doing our best. We had all these folks down here on the ground in these support rooms. This is mainly the two shifts of the Goddard team helping us. Again, I look at these faces, and there's a memory for each one of them. Really dedicated people who helped us out, not only got us prepared, but stayed with us during the mission and made sure that we needed everything we had. And it really was about the mission. It was about the telescope, and it was a privilege to be a part of all that. So that's all I had prepared. We got time for questions? All right, we'll do some questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. I am Dr. Jennifer Levasseur. I am the Space Shuttle and International Space Station curator here at the museum, and I get the privilege of asking you at least the first question, maybe a few more. I think most of the audience has probably figured out you're a pretty funny guy. Good sense of humor. In fact, for those of you who have never watched it on YouTube, Mike is co-host of 2 Funny Astronauts with Garrett Reisman. Great show, highly recommend. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, you talk all about these experiences on the ground, the time that you're spending that's not in space, and you're an astronaut, working really, really hard. How do you keep humor in that? How do you, when the moments are heavy, like you mentioned STS-107, when the moments are heavy, when things are difficult, when you have a really big challenge for the young people in the audience who are facing their careers ahead of them, or even for those of us who face challenges in our daily work, how do you keep the humor there as much as you can?
Well, I think I think if it comes naturally to you to be that way, that's okay. I think that there are different types of leaders. There's different styles of leadership and of working. And for me, I think I like trying to keep it light. Try not to get too serious about anything. Of course, what we were doing was really serious, and I hope when I was kidding around, people didn't necessarily think it was an indication that I was not taking my job seriously, but I certainly was. But just for me, it was just trying to keep things loose. And but all of our, we had a very funny crew actually. Everyone had a sense of humor, and all contributed to try to make it fun. And I think by keeping it funny and light, that's helpful. I remember there was an experienced astronaut at the time. I hadn't flown yet, and Michel Tonini, who's a French astronaut, and he and I were working a project together and talking about stuff, and he said something about the way you comprise a crew, and he says to me, he goes, "Mike, it's always good to have one funny guy on a crew." I don't know if he saw maybe this is something you could contribute, Mike, because I don't know about the stuff we're working on, but he said it's always good to have one funny guy on a crew and keep everybody going, And then he looks and he says, "But not 2." He says, "You have 2 funny guys, it becomes like a gang and nothing gets done. But one funny guy, that's okay."
That explains it then.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to keep going with the funny here. Travis from Pennsylvania, who, thank you, by the way, for those of you who submitted questions from our remote viewers. Travis from Pennsylvania asks, what was your favorite memory of the Big Bang Theory? And how realistic is the process that Howard went through?
All right, so this is for Big Bang Theory fans, I guess. If it's a very funny TV show that ran for a long time. And what was his initial question? What was it? What about Howard's
what was
training?
your favorite part of the experience, but also Howard's training?
So overall, all right, so Howard's training, nah, not really. So, all right, so we really picked on Howard. If you see this show, so what happened was NASA asked me to help them help these Big Bang Theory writers with a script. They had this idea. They wanted to send Wolowitz, the character, if you're familiar with the show, to space, and he wanted some material. And so I was going out to. It was kind of loose, like if you're ever out in LA, we're not going to pay you to go out there, Mike, but if you're out in LA, you have an hour, go speak to these guys. I'm like, really? Okay. And my son was a water polo player, and he had a tournament out in LA, and so I was going to be out there, and they arranged it so I was going to come by in between his games. I remember it was like it depended if they won, I could come. If not, I had to come back. But they were like, yeah, whenever you want. So I went into the Warner Brothers studios, into the writer's room, and I was just telling them goofy stories. And we became friendly and stayed in touch, and I gave him some help with a script, and I went to see a taping, and I thought that was it. And then about, a few months later, Bill Prady, who's one of the co-creators, and has since become a very good friend of mine, he writes me an email and says, hey, we've got an idea. We wonder if you can come on the show. We wonder if you can act. And I said, no, I can't act. In fact, the last acting gig I had was that elephant role in a first grade play. I think I might have played a bird in third grade. But other than that, that was it. I can't act. And then he writes back, because that's okay. He goes, you've been you a really long time. Just be you. I'm like, all right. So it was me. And the best memory of it, I think it was just wasn't quite like going into space, but it was that sort of team atmosphere. Like I remember waking up the morning of we were going to go and do the taping and being really excited about it and getting ready to go, and it was a really very nice group of people. All the actors was so nice, and I think that made the show because I got to know some of the camera people and the wardrobe people and all these folks that worked on it had worked on other shows, and sometimes they're not as nice on these other shows. But the Big Bang Theory actors were really nice, and everyone was just a wonderful group of people. And so I think that's my favorite memory is just being around them and that feeling of going in to tape the show. And as far as like what we did to Wolowitz, so in the show we make fun of the guy. And we go to space with him, and there's a Russian cosmonaut who's played by Pasha Linchikov, who's also one of my friends now as Russian actor. And I was telling Chuck Lorre, who developed the show with my friend Bill Prady, I said, Chuck, we would never do this to a guy because we just brutalize him. We just make fun of him and play tricks on him and stuff. And, he's crying, calling his wife, and then we're making fun of him and all these terrible things. And I said, Chuck, we would never do this to a guy, that's having trouble in space. And, when I had my adaptation problems, my friends didn't make fun of me on my first flight. We would never do that to anybody, we'd always help them. And he goes, Mike, you don't understand. I go, okay. He said, this is comedy. And he said, it was interesting is that he would, every once in a while, he was a very nice, he's a good guy, Chuck. And he would, I would ask him questions, and he would tell me about how you write the show or whatever. But he said, what's going on here, Mike, is that he's away at camp. He's a little boy away at camp. Oh. And the kids are picking on him, and he's calling his mom, which was his wife. He was calling, if you've seen the show, having these saying, the astronauts are picking on me, and that is a formula that works for television. And I was like, okay, cool, So, Wolowitz would not get pummeled like that for real.
Well, I can't resist but ask this next question. Mm-hmm. It comes from Catherine, who is 5 years old, and she wants to know, why do astronauts go into space?
Why do astronauts go into space?
And is it any fun?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's fun on the ground too. We had a lot of fun with our training and doing that. It's about exploration. It's about making our planet a better place to live, understanding our environment, understanding the places around us, and exploring and gaining knowledge. And it's about the future as well. I think one of the things that they were trying to do for many years at NASA was also make it economically viable as a new industry. Like airplanes were mainly developed by the government and then became a thriving industry. And now we see that result too. It's a huge, some of the most successful companies in the world are spaceflight companies now. and they're building private space stations, and so I think it's also a lot of economic benefit. But as far as people going, you know, there sometimes I know this, I don't think this nice smart 5-year-old might be asking that, but if you're like looking at robots versus people, and I mentioned that what John and I were looking at it those years ago, is people are pretty extraordinary what we can do, and I know there's a lot going on with AI and all that's great, but you know, for example, the Mars rover just celebrated its 13th anniversary. I think it's covered like 23 miles in those years. It's pretty big. It's like the size of a small SUV. But imagine if you had astronauts up there for 13 years. You cover a lot more ground and be able to take stuff to the lab and analyze it. And so I think there's the wonder of it. For me, it was I wanted to be part of that team. I wanted, you know, I watched The Right Stuff, the movie, and saw the camaraderie and that the teamwork that they had. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be part of something that was bigger than me. My father worked for the New York City Fire Department. I think that's where I got that from. You know, be part of an organization where you take care of each other and all that. And that's what I wanted. That's what I felt I had at NASA, and to do some really interesting things and be around it. The conversations I've had with my friends here are, you know, really meaningful to me. Just, you know, you have similar interests and so on. So I think it's a really cool job. But I think that humans go there because we are really good explorers, and we can ask questions and we can do things, at least right now, that no robot or machine can do.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm not supposed to ask this because that was meant to be the last question, but would you go back?
If those guys will go with me, I'll go back.
Yeah,
I would. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'm happy with what I'm doing now. I think, truthfully, I don't know. I think it would depend on what I was going to do.
Yeah.
You know, I really felt that going to space for me was meaningful because it had a real purpose to it.
Sure.
And if there was something that they needed me to do or I could do that really was purposeful, sure, I'd go back. But I don't think anyone's going to be ringing my doorbell to do that.
You never know.
Never know.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. Thank you to our sponsor, Boeing, for bringing this event to us tonight. To our speaker.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for having me.
Just a few reminders as we get ready to exit the room. Please exit and go up the stairs to the second floor, where you will be able to take an escalator down to Milestones of Flight. The book signing will happen down in Milestones of Flight, where you'll also be able to purchase books down there. Mike will sign one additional item other than the books, so please limit yourselves. Unfortunately, we are not able to allow any staged photography, but we can help take photos of you as things are signed. And then you'll also be able to exit via either side of the building, so either Independence Avenue or Jefferson Avenue towards the mall. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Have a great evening.